Welcome to our weekly roundup of key business developments in Sri Lanka. I'm Nishani Pigera. Let's first take a look at the top stories for this week. IMF delegation to conclude visit. Exports up in August. And inflation turns deflationary in September. In our main story this week, the IMF delegation will conclude its visit to Sri Lanka today. The visit is a courtesy call following the victory of President Anurukumara Dissanayake in the recent presidential elections. According to Cabinet spokesperson Vijitha Herath, no structural changes were discussed during this meeting. He added that high-level discussions will be held with the Sri Lankan delegation at the IMF headquarters at the end of the month. The NPP government in its manifesto has agreed to work alongside the IMF while stating that it will revisit the terms that has imposed a heavy tax burden on the people. Hence, the scheduled third review this month will also be rescheduled to a later date, which has not been announced yet. The minister also clarified that previous the government had not come to a final agreement with the bondholder group, rather only reached the last stage of discussions. Merchandise exports in August rose to 4.2% from a year earlier to nearly $1.17 billion. In the month, apparel exports rose 17.5% to $511 million, crossing the $500 million mark for the first time in 2 years, while tea and coconuts also recorded strong growth. Exports to the United States, Sri Lanka's single largest export destination, rose 19.4% from a year earlier to $301 million, although trade to the European Union fell to $282 million. Meanwhile, services exports expanded by a significant 6.5% from a year earlier to $319 million. Sri Lanka's key inflation rate turned deflationary, falling 0.5% from a year earlier. This is the first time since 1995 Sri Lanka has recorded a deflation in prices, while the central bank has only created 0.84% inflation in the last 24 months. Food prices deflated by 0.3% in the month, while prices for non-food items fell 0.5%. According to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, inflation is expected to be below 5% for the coming few quarters. Sri Lanka's private credit grew by a significant 135 billion rupees in August 2024, on top of a 60 billion rupee expansion a month earlier. The recent expansion brings year-to-date disbursements to 341 billion rupees. Analysts warn that the recent surge in private credit can cause inflationary pressure to the rupee. Meanwhile, net credit to the public sector contracted by 94 billion rupees in the month. The Sri Lanka Purchasing Managers Index for construction slowed to 51.4 in August 2024, although continuing expansion for the fourth consecutive month. In the month, there was a slight slowdown in awarding new projects as the presidential elections were held. Further, the sector's employment continued to contract as firms have not begun rehiring. The All-Share Price Index at the Colombo Stock Exchange continued the bullish trend into the second consecutive week following the victory of NPP candidate Anurukumara Dissanayake. The index has gained nearly 1,000 points since the election. Despite the current bullish sentiment, analysts await further clarity on the policies of the new government in steering the economy. Earlier, chairperson of the CSE, Dilshan Weerasekara, speaking to Bloomberg Market, said that the boss expects foreign investors to return to the market sooner than later following the completion of the debt restructuring and the expected rating upgrade. The Japanese International Cooperation Agency will promptly resume work on the 11 stalled projects in Sri Lanka. The stalled projects will bring in an additional $1.1 billion in funding over the next 5 years. Some of the major stalled projects include the $1.5 billion light rail project and the $550 million Terminal 2 project at the BIA. Even President Anurukumara Dissanayake in his speeches iterated that the airport is an integral part in boosting Sri Lanka tourism. In our weekly tourism update, in the month of September, over 122,000 tourists arrived in the country, bringing the year-to-date total to nearly 1.5 million. Delhi arrivals continue to trend lower, falling to 4,071 in the month, down from the 5,310 recorded in August. India continues to be the primary source market, followed by China and the United Kingdom. At the Treasury bill auction held on Wednesday, yields on all maturities fell this week. Bids amounting to 338 billion rupees were received, of which 142 billion were accepted. The Sri Lankan rupee appreciated against the dollar this week, with the central bank's indicative mid-spot rate ranging around 295 to 300 rupees. The selling rate of the rupee dropped below rupees 300 for the first time in 15 months. And with that, we wind up for this week. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel at the link below for regular updates on economic and business developments in Sri Lanka. Until we see you again next week, thank you for watching. Stay safe.